Welcome to What the Flick, everybody. Tim, Alonso, and Ben. Episode 1 of the limited, just one season, right?
Yeah, it's a miniseries.
The miniseries of The Night Of on HBO. Really, really good stuff. Now, this is going to be a little harder for you, Tim, because you've seen many episodes.
Yes, I've seen everything except the final episode.
All right, so
we've only seen the pilots or the first episode.
No problem.
Right, so the episode basically, just so you know, right, ends with Turturro realizing that it's Detective Box's case, which he knows means it's
going to be a toughie.
Be a toughie for him to get the kid off. So there was like tension right away, huh?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny, just from the opening credits, I was realizing this has clearly been knocking around for a while since James Gandolfini is an executive producer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So and was supposed to be the star of it initially.
Oh, he was supposed to be Box?
He was supposed to be Turturro.
Turturro. Oh.
Basically, Turturro stepped in, and they were such good friends that the producers approached Turturro about. Oh, and so it's interesting to watch the.
Well, they're practically related since Turturro's sister played Gandolfini's sister on The Sopranos. Right. So you know.
I think cousin, not sister. I think, but I might be wrong. Ada.
Yeah,
but what when we were reviewing the Infiltrator, we talked, and even though it's not a totally well-known story, you talked about how you can create tension in historical pictures, even if you know
the outcome.
Even if you know the outcome. And what's interesting here is just by the trailers and the whole, we know the kid's going to get arrested and charged with the murder, right? Like, and I don't think anyone watching this episode is tense about that.
But you're still every step like, oh no!
But when he's in the car, he goes in the car. When I hope they don't find out that the guy didn't mean just hail the taxi, but was driving the taxi, because the light bulb's going to go off for these cops when they say that, and they're like, of course it's going to go off. They're going to arrest him. I know they're going to.
But yeah, they really ratchet up the tension by giving you like a million different opportunities where you think the cops were overworked and had like just thinking about other stuff, or you'd be like, yeah, whatever, just go. Like there's so many close calls of just getting away, you know. Oh my God.
One of the things I really love about that first episode is while I was watching it, it's divided into segments basically. First, it's him going out, meeting the woman, Andrea, and then their kind of night out, and then basically the morning after and what happens there and him getting arrested and then him ending up in that jail cell. When that first segment basically ends, I thought, well, that was the whole episode, right? And it's only 20 minutes. And it's such a great, like, perfectly constructed, like, little mini piece of drama. Yeah. That could almost be its own show in terms of how well it's done.
No moment of dragging at all, like, really sustained.
Right. Well, I mean, Richard Price and Steven Zalian, who would never have necessarily paired those two, but they're both really good at what they do. And they're just accomplishing, and you're right. The story structure itself is so great, and it's so the forward momentum is so fascinating. But just all these little moments they're in. Like I love when they're interviewing the guy who had made the comment earlier on about Homeland Security and go home and get your bombs or whatever.
Bodie from The Wire.
Oh, okay. And they ask him if he knew the woman, and he goes, well, not per se.
There's so much like, because Richard Price wrote this episode and Zalian directed it, and it's like it has so many like great crackling. The thing I like about Price as a writer is that he writes New York characters so well without being like whiz bang.
Look
how clever my New York dialogue is. It just feels like guys and gals who've just lived in New York City their entire lives. Like that show just feels so seeped in like New York milieu that it works really well. There's a lot of great performances in that first episode, but Bill Camp, I think, is so tremendous as the detective. Because like, he's like one of these like character actors that you see in everything. He's been in like a couple of Jeff Nichols movies. He's actually in the new Jason Bourne film. He's just in a ton of different stuff. And when he always pops up, I always think, oh, right, like he's one of those character actors who's risen to the level that you recognize him, but maybe you don't know his name.
I thought when he was in bed getting the phone call, I thought it was Ted Levine.
Oh, right.
I was sure it was. And I was like, oh, wait, it's not.
And I just think he's just so, because the thing I like about him in this first episode especially is that in some ways he's kind of the bad guy. Like he's the one that is trying to basically get the guy that we don't think, we don't know if he did, but we kind of feel like he's a good kid. He couldn't have done it. And I just like how Bill Camp kind of walks that line of, he's a guy of principle. Like he's not a shady detective. He's not somebody that you think necessarily does anything, just trying to get the kid in trouble, but he's also trying to do his job.
Right, he's not going to beat any suspects with a phone book, but
but he's going to do his job. He let the other cops rough him up pointlessly when they ask him to strip, shove him against a wall. They don't care. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't step up. Afterwards, he goes, sorry about that. But he doesn't, and then he offers him a gown. But all that's designed to give trust so that he'll keep not getting a lawyer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's
still
the good cop, bad cop.
He still does the, I'm trying to help you here. You're not trying to help him. You're not trying to help him at all.
You're trying to close
You're
this
trying
thing.
You're trying to ruin his life. I mean, maybe because he's a horrible murderer and his life should be ruined, but he's lying. But yet, somehow that meets the standard of, well, he didn't pistol whip him, and he didn't shoot him.
But I think you can argue he's still basically falling under the rubric of doing his job.
Totally. Yeah. No. He's a professional in a way that we know isn't always the case. So we like him, and I don't even object to it so much. But like we have to recognize that the good cops are not, like, even in this case, they're not like, hey, Larry, go easy. We already got him.
Right.
I like that they turned, especially given the current climate that we're in, and I like whenever shows or whenever art does this, but sort of just turning it a little bit on its head, because the cop who is most unfair to that kid is the black woman, right? Who said, when he goes, I can go, and she goes, shut up, who's talking to you?
Right. Did I say that?
Right, and you're like, hey, you've got, like, he's not allowed to say anything at any point, like, he's not a threat to you, but she's what we would imagine, right, is
She'd be the compassionate one.
Right, but no, she's in fact, she's the bully.
Let's talk about Riz Ahmed, because he's so great in this. And I've been a fan of his for a long time, for Lions and whatnot. For one thing, already has a better American accent than any of the Brits on Preacher, who are not getting the Texas thing right. But, I totally bought him as somebody who was an American-born Pakistani. And such great eyes.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much empathy and just you're drawn in so much by him. Even though we're not getting giant amounts of exposition, he doesn't get any big monologues in this, but we really quickly kind of feel like we know who this guy is and what he's about and what he wants and why we should feel sympathetic for him in this situation. Although obviously we're still waiting to find out what really happened.
And even though he born and raised in New York, so he's lived in New York his entire life.
Yeah.
You can the eyes is such a great point, because you just watch his eyes as that first episode goes along, and you realize he is such a kid. He is so absolutely terrified. He's so out of his element in this moment, and you can't help but feel like all of these cops and detectives are going to eat him alive.
That point about like how even though he's getting arrested, that you're still feeling tense every step of the way when he's in the car, like they're gonna let him go. At some point, is one cop gonna go? What do we even have him for? Are they gonna see the blood on the taxi?
Yeah.
Are they gonna they're gonna find the knife? And that's all him, right? I mean, it's the writing, it's the pacing, it's the directing, of course. But like you're right, he really sells his terror, his sort of quiet terror, because most of it he's never speaking. He's just looking around. He's just putting it together. He's looking at people in the eye, wondering if they're going to put it together, wondering if they're going to recognize him. And he was so close to being able to walk out. Now, Tim, you probably have to be silent here, but so do you think we're supposed to wonder whether he did it? Because like my presumption throughout was until later, until after it was over, was he definitely didn't do it. Who did it? Was it the other guy with J.D. Williams, who plays the guy who played Bodie on The Wire, and he was so good at that. He's such a great actor.
I don't know. I mean, I could see. My immediate thing is, oh no, of course he didn't do it. But then, of course, obviously, if we have to sustain this thing for several episodes, I'm sure some damning bit of information is going to surface later, where it's like, oh.
But he had no blood on him,
right?
When he woke up, and if he did do it, he legitimately didn't remember, obviously.
It's interesting, again, that this has been a project that's been in production for quite a while, but they're now coming on after Making a Murderer.
Right.
Which I think has sort of whetted our appetite for these sort of like...
Cops decide ahead of time.
Yeah, these sort of like seemingly obvious mysteries that maybe aren't so obvious, and is an innocent person being railroaded, or is he,
Right. Steve Avery did not have a knife in his jacket. Like the cops deciding that this guy did it, much more logical.
Well, they had a little more to go on, granted. Yes.
I will only say that after watching the first episode, I thought, this poor kid, he couldn't have done it. I thought, well, am I being led down a garden path? I definitely felt that after the first. I'll say nothing more than that. Okay. That's how I felt, because you feel in that first episode, because he wakes up. And there's no
he's talking to her. He's like, I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
And he's not somebody who knows drugs or alcohol at all, and so all of that stuff, it definitely seems yeah. So after the first episode, I definitely felt
Yeah,
that
he could have whatever he took, which we don't even know, right?
Ecstasy, I
right,
assume.
Right, but
Molly, I believe the kids call it.
Ding, that's correct. Yes.
right, maybe it, but I mean, I don't think that's what it does, I don't know.
It makes you murder somebody? I don't, that only in like, ecstasy madness.
I also want to say, in terms of like making a murderer or a serial like this, one of the things I think is really great also in that first episode is that, she gets killed pretty early, obviously, in that first episode. But I actually really think that character is established in a nice way in that first episode. That you actually feel like she's a real person.
Right.
And obviously,
not just a plot device.
Yeah, and obviously she is more directed to his character arc because like they kind of have like a meet cute and they kind of bond over all this stuff, and then she's killed pretty soon after that. But I actually really like that they actually go to the trouble of establishing her as a real person.
Totally, you're like something's bad, something sad happened to her at the sort of bare minimum, we think, and like you feel bad for her. Nobody wants to go by themselves to the beach in New York on a Saturday night, unless something sort of at least emotionally traumatic has happened to them. Yeah, you're right. They do build her nicely.
And since we haven't mentioned John Turturro,
Oh yes.
Nice.
I mean he's for a long time been one of my favorite like just character actors, and obviously he's had starring stuff in Barton Fink a long time ago. But I'm of course curious how Gandolfini would have done this character.
Well,
but it's hard.
But can you imagine him in sandals?
I have to say, there's something that's like
that's a
sort of
nice
like
touch.
this thing is sort of like beaten down and ground down about that character, the lawyer Stone, that feels like Turturro gets it, kind of from that first episode. Like there's something about that guy that I think Turturro kind of brings to it. That immediately I thought, I know who this guy is. I kind of love that character kind of from the first second.
When you think about all of I mean, granted, he does the Transformers movies, but beyond that, when you think of the probably like big paycheck, stupid Hollywood stuff that Turturro turns down or takes only so that he can then make his oddball little movies, that he directs and appears in. I think he gets the idea of somebody who's sort of fighting the system, who is trying to hang on to his principles and is, sort of surrounded by sharks all the time. So yeah, I think he totally gets that character. That character also kind of reminds me of, what's that James Wood, is it True Believer?
Yeah.
With Robert Downey, where he plays the
lawyer.
Yeah, like that kind of like
I bet James Woods hates that he played that role now.
Probably, yeah. Well, but he was good in it. Sorry, James.
He was.
Woods.
He had a ponytail in that, right?
Maybe, yeah. He
like
spiritually, if not physically. So the night of, this is good stuff. I'm riveted to see what happens next. I'm envious you're ahead of me, but thank you for not giving away anything.
I'm sure we're in a world, in 10 seconds, I'm sure we're in a world where there are still plenty of people who hate criminal defense lawyers, but these last 4 years have helped them. Like we're back to a point in the 70s where you can think like, oh, look at those sort of crusaders for justice.
Thank God for them.
Because when for True Believer, like it seemed like I'm sure that didn't do well in part because you're like, oh, nobody wants to root for this guy, right? Guy getting killers off because the cops, we're still at that mind. Cops arrest a guy.
Then
because he did it.
Yeah,
it's because he did it. Why would the cops do anything else?
This will kill you. Emmy nominations came out this morning.
Yeah.
Nothing for Show Me a Hero.
Yeah. I watched that little thing live. Come on, it was so good.
I know.
How do you not get it? And they have they can do 6 now for.
Yeah, I know. Well,
but 6. Obviously, we should be reviewing Mr. Robot.
I know. It's the one of the drama nominees that we didn't do, and apparently we are doing season 2. I'm not, but someone is.
Right,
so
7
there is that.
Of the 7 nominees, 6 of those shows are shows that we
recap.
We were on it, man.
Yes,
we were on it.
But if you didn't see Show Me a Hero, go watch that on HBO Go or Now or whatever, and keep watching Night Up too. Thanks.